right, well, California will now pay for sex changes for illegal immigrants. As of January 1st, the state's new healthcare system expands coverage for all healthcare, not just the sex changes, the good stuff too, presumably, for over 700,000 undocumented immigrants. And as part of that program, the state will include sex changes, that includes surgery and hormone therapy. So boob jobs for men, if they want them. Not for women, though. This is for gender dysphoria. If you're a woman who just maybe wants different breasts or bigger breasts or whatever, no, this is not for you and how you perceive yourself. It's for gender dysphoria. This is now the new Medi-Cal program. And again, people who have private health insurance have to pay a lot for these types of things. Boob jobs, hormones, maybe reconstructive facial surgery, not if you're transgendered. Here is the new California Medicaid program. It's called Medi-Cal, went into effect on January 1st. We're going to talk about it. But first, let's just look at California's budget to pay for all of this. Keep in mind, California is home to some of the wealthiest people in the U.S. and therefore the planet. And yet, according to the Legislative Analyst Office, the state's nonpartisan policy advisor, the state is operating a budget deficit of $68 billion. Take a look at this. Now, what we're looking at here is what they can afford to spend, their expenditures. Well, it's been fairly constant if you look at the third line there over the last 3 years. So why then such a big operating budget if they're not actually spending so much? Well, the budget office says that it's due to high unemployment and an economic downturn. Now, they recently passed a proposition to allow just a minimum level of spending for educational programs. So it's not like they're trying to invest in education. Oh, no. They're instead going to pay for this new Medicaid program. The state says that in order to, though, balance their budget, they either need to reduce spending, which they don't seem to want to do, increase revenues, shift cost, or use reserves. Here's the forecast for California's continued deficit. They do seem to think that with a recovering economy, it will get better. But this year, a record deficit of $68 billion. So given that, can the state afford to hand out cross-sex hormones and pay for sex change surgeries for undocumented immigrants? Well, they're gonna. That's the plan. Here's the document that the state put out in order to detail transgender and gender diverse services for Medi-Cal. Notice that the procedure down below for overriding any problems of billing codes, if that person comes in, their billing code is male, but they don't want to be male. Oh, we got a plan for that, right? So here are all the transgender services that we're going to do. Take a look at the covered benefits. It includes, oh yes, hormone therapy. That includes puberty blockers, meaning if a young person does not want to go through puberty to progress to an adult, male or female, we can put that on pause with puberty blockers, which is not a neutral act. Not reversible, like doctors say they claim, and also surgical procedures that bring primary and secondary gender characteristics into conformity with the individual's identified gender. They say that these are medically necessary. We've seen the use of this word before, and they say that they want to achieve this normal appearance, right? Okay. Now, this idea of normal appearance to a gender and identity, it makes the state basically a makeup artist, trying to sort of fool people to the best of their ability away from our innate ability to recognize gender. Now, why can humans recognize gender? Obviously, it's not because we're all fashionistas or because we like makeup in order to decide who's a woman and who's not. It's because we are innately able to do this because we're supposed to know who we can mate with and who we can't. There's a reason for it, right? And so we're trying to trick us out of this innate ability. And so the goal here is to trick fellow humans into thinking that the person they're looking at is the opposite sex from the sex that they're born. It says only a licensed mental professional must recommend this, but what conscionable medical professional, especially a mental health professional, would advise their client to change their appearance according to perception? It is generally not good to care about what other people think and perceive of you. That actually makes mental health much worse. I think we can all agree on that. It's not good to live your life obsessed with how the world sees you. And so by telling someone you'll help them change their body so that other people perceive you differently, you're hurting this person. Imagine doing that with another dysphoria like dyslexia or bulimia. Not dyslexia, I'm sorry. Bulimia or anorexia. You think you're fat? Well, let's do some surgery so that you look as skinny as you want to look. Like, that's harmful, right? That's cruelty. It's the opposite of acceptance. What did the state of California use to determine these new standards? Oh, you guessed it. They used the whack as shit document. Sorry, that's what it is. From WPATH, the World Professional Association for Transgender Health. Their standards of care. We've discussed this document many times. That's why I call it whack as shit, because it's whack as shit. The WPATH standards of care documents are not based on any science. It's basically a wish list of what trans activists want to be true. Recall when Representative Dan Crenshaw of Texas last year questioned trans activist Dr. Meredith McNamara about the science behind the standards of care. She made it perfectly clear that the standards are standards because we call them standards. That's basically it, not because of any science or research. Watch.
There is great uncertainty about the effects of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and surgeries in young people. The Journal of Endocrine Society came up with the same conclusion, even the American Academy of Pediatrics. They all cite the lack of evidence. And so here's the thing. If you're doing a therapy and it's, temporary, whatever, fine, maybe let's try it, let's see if it works. But when you're talking about permanent physiological changes, do you not agree, just from an ethical standpoint, that you might want extremely strong evidence of the benefits? And there is no systematic review that states that there is strong evidence of benefits.
Sir, are you aware of how the quality evidence grading system works and how it's applied?
Yeah, we read through it. That's why I'm citing these journals. So which journal says something different? We should have that debate. Tell me a journal that has done systematic reviews that cites different evidence, that cites strong evidence for benefits of these therapies.
The standards of care were developed based on extensive...
You're not telling me any journal, you're not telling me any study. Don't say standards of care.
Yeah. So...
tell me one.
The standards of care.
That's the standards of care. That's not a journal, that's not a study. That's not an organization, that's not an institution. You're just saying words. Name one study.
Yeah.
I'm out of time. I yield back.
Okay, again, standards of care are just because we wrote them down and called them standards of care. She has also admitted that gender affirming care would never pass clinical trials or reviews. I will play you this video until the cows come home because it continues to be true, because there is nothing that proves that gender affirming care, as it's called, resolves gender dysphoria, helps anybody, and is not harmful. Here she is admitting that.
Moving on, the state claims that the absence of randomized controlled trials negates all evidence for the benefits of gender affirming care. First, an RCT, or randomized controlled trial, for gender affirming care would never pass an institutional review board safety or ethical standard.
Okay, so California taxpayers, do you want the standards of care from WPATH to determine your medical procedures? Much less for Medi-Cal. It's worth noting that Oregon already offers these things as part of its state-funded Medicaid program. Other states are just following suit. California, though, is the first one to say not only do we offer this as part of our Medicaid program, but undocumented immigrants can have it too. So you think about something that an undocumented immigrant might need, like, I don't know, help opening a bank account, a secured job, a path to citizenship, right? Also a boob job. When did that make the list? Why do they need that, right? Is this because we think that that's good for them? Because we think it won't hurt? One of the drugs that's being handed out is Lupron. That's a drug created to treat cancer, but it's also used to block puberty in trans-identified children. We already know that it's associated with, bone loss, hair loss, memory loss, long-term association with cancer, but the standards of care don't care. When it is given to a cancer patient, it costs around $4,000. That's what's billed to insurance. When it is given to a trans patient, it costs around $9,000. It's not like the pharmaceutical company says, oh, but these are for undocumented immigrants. It's part of a Medicaid program. We won't bill you in full. Lol. They bill in full, and they make their money now from taxpayers. And there is no age requirement for any of these procedures, not cross-sex hormones, not puberty blockers, not surgery. In fact, WPATH dropped all age requirements for their standards of care in 2022, all age limits. So it used to be, I believe that, for instance, what they call top surgery, which is just cutting off boobs, they said should not start until 17. Now it's like, cut them off when they show up. When you got those little buds, just start snipping, right? Anybody, any procedure, no minimum age requirement anymore. So that's what we're talking about here. Taxpayer-funded harsh pharmaceuticals and sex change surgeries for anyone of any age using these WPATH guidelines. So what the state of California and the state of Oregon is doing now, and what they don't do, is also interesting because there is no care here to cover gender dysphoria for gender detransitioning. They do not. If they do, it's not listed in these documents because, again, there's no research or standard of care on detransitioning because they pretend that it doesn't happen, which is a lie. In fact, research shows that 80% of trans patients do not continue to fill their prescriptions 4 years after they start. Because it hurts. It's hurting their body. It's dangerous.
Everything they think that they're looking for on the other side of that isn't there when they get there. That's the problem. They're told that this is going to make them feel the way they're supposed to feel. They're going to feel amazing and all this stuff. And then they get there and they realize they don't feel any different. They just have open wounds now and are taking medication for the rest of their lives.
Yes. Yeah. There is no data that shows that gender dysphoria resolves based on transition. In fact, the data shows that gender transition and that gender dysphoria persists no matter what you do to your body. And yeah, it hurts. It hurts to have these major surgeries. They have high complication rates, and these pharmaceuticals hurt your body. They cause all kinds of pain, redistribution of weight, muscle loss, bone loss. I don't know who would think that this is actually caring for undocumented immigrants or anybody.
And think about their life with a partner. If they ever want to be with somebody, like, you have things that aren't real on you now that you're going to have to find specific people that are open to that. And it just kind of makes you you have that pressure on top of everything else that you're dealing with.
Well, right. When you don't complete puberty, you can never have an orgasm. And so we're making these children sterile. And they can never then, if you know anything about the orgasm process, you then release hormonal attachment. They can never really have these relationships in a way that the body is meant to have. I don't know who would wish this on their worst enemy. And so why we think that it's wonderful to offer it to anybody, much less undocumented immigrants, much less put this on the taxpayers. I just don't know why we would think that that's a good thing to do. Now, the state is saying that this will cover 700,000 undocumented immigrants, but we all know that's not the number. With illegal immigration surging past 2 million people alone crossing the southern border illegally in 2023 alone. We know that number is going to be high. I saw a comment in the chat just a few minutes ago saying, who cares about transgender people? Well, I care because I care about the fact that on taxpayer dollars, it's hurting young people. It's putting false ideology into their heads and making them lifelong pharmaceutical patients. And that this will be on the taxpayers. And it's falsely selling us this idea that it will help them when it really does hurt. Also, it gaslights people by asking them to pretend that they don't see one gender when they do. When it's not hateful to to notice that David and I are different sexes. It's not hateful, it's innate. We just were built that way. So no matter what, pretty sure the David decides to wear tomorrow. We're not going to gaslight you like that. Pretty clear, right? I would think. So let us know what you think about that. That's why we care. That's why I care. Anyway, I just hate to see this ideology hurting people, and especially, with taxpayer dollars. It's just not something that I think that.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
And in my opinion, you care so much about child trafficking. This is another form of trafficking, in my opinion. You're trafficking them to big pharma. You're basically selling these kids to big pharma for the rest of their lives.
Yeah,
and that's important.
Right. It's turning off all of these things that make us fundamentally human, like the ability to connect to somebody through a sexual experience, the ability to procreate, the ability to use your body to sustain a human, because if you cut off your boobs, you can never breastfeed. And that's a wonderful experience. The ability to, all of these types of things, and I think that it's interesting to see just today, I think we're going to cover this story maybe a little bit more tomorrow, but the Pope came out and said that he is against surrogacy. And I think that it's interesting now to think about this idea of, turning off these human systems and moving towards a more automated, transhumanistic agenda. I didn't see this one coming. I didn't see how. I know there's a lot of people who speak out against surrogacy. And this is one, maybe I'm just behind on this, because I was a little behind on transgender, gender critical ideology as well, because I, bought into it's great. Let anybody be any gender. It's fine. I didn't realize that the medicalization of it would really take root like this. So I'm interested in how now surrogacy is becoming the next bit of pushing back against what may or may not be a transhumanistic agenda. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that tomorrow, because I'm not prepared to talk about it today. And I'm curious. I am indeed very curious, especially why this might be an agenda for Catholicism, why this might be something to consider as, I don't know. I think, what does the Pope say? He said it's unnatural. He in fact used the words despicable, commercialization of pregnancy. So I'm curious. Let me know where you think I should research, where I should look in that, because I thought that was an open and shut case, adoption, it's totally fine. Is it though? Let's take a look. Let's look. If there's something there, I'll look at it, because I didn't see this coming.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.